See, I'm just gonna ride the wave until the morning sun. If I just speak into existence, it's already done. It's already done. It's already done. If I just speak into existence, it's already done.
Thank you for coming along on our journey today with Educating Empathy, our podcast presented to you by SissyMarySue Education Fund, a nonprofit 501c3. My name is Dr. Wendy Mulhauser, aka SissyMarySue. Welcome today to our talk with Dr. Lenneal Henderson. I want to share with the listeners that we had recorded this previously, and it was an almost 3-hour conversation. So we will have a part 1, part 2. Welcome to part 1 of our conversation with Dr. Lenneal Henderson, president of our nonprofit 501c3 SissyMarySue Education Fund. Gosh, I'm so excited about this, though, because over the years, I have heard all these wonderful stories, and now I get to share them with the world, and you get to share them with the world. I am humbled and honored to introduce our guest, Dr. Lenneal Henderson, who is the president of our board of directors for SissyMarySue Education Fund. Dr. Lenneal Henderson is a national treasure. I have told him this repeatedly, and I'm saying it again. Dr. Lenneal Henderson is a national treasure. He grew up in a social justice-minded family, attended Berkeley in the 60s, worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he has been actively involved in policy that has impacted greatly, served as a dean, and is a professor at 3 colleges. He also serves on the boards of other organizations he believes in, like Media U. There are so many more accomplishments and accolades that I could share about Dr. Lenneal Henderson, but these will have to suffice at this time. You'll learn more in the interview or in our conversation. He also has shared so beautifully within our nonprofit to give us the strength that we have to create greater access in education. I was beyond honored that he was my professor for my doctoral systems classes and served on my dissertation committee. We're a great team. I'm honored to work with him and to serve as an exec director with he as the president. Welcome, Dr. Henderson. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, and appreciate being here and appreciate your leadership and inspiration.
Oh, gosh, the same for you. From what I know about you, Lenneal, I believe that your entire life, you have embodied empathy in all aspects of your formidable, impactful service in education and society. I am thrilled to have our listeners come along today with us so that they can learn why I know this to be true. First, I want to ask you, are you okay? You shared with me about that you broke your knee this past Thursday, and when you were trying to help your wife from falling, with your wife having had a recent back surgery, I know a fall for her could have potentially been detrimental and just a very serious occurrence. Goodness, I mean, like the fact that you are still doing this interview is a reminder of your generosity, your dedication, your resilience, and your servant heart.
Well, yeah, no, just one of those accidents that happened, and we went and got it treated immediately, and I'll be not able to drive or walk for a little bit, but other than that, okay. And it redefined for me the words knees assessment.
I like that. Knees assessment. That's pretty good. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to just jump in, Lenneal, and get started with these first questions. So where do you currently work?
I am at Virginia State University. I have 2 titles. One is senior fellow, which I translated to mean old man. And the other is Eminent Scholar, which is allows me to teach courses, which I'm doing this semester. I also teach at the College of William and Mary and the Fielding Graduate University, as you know.
That's right. Wonderful. Which boards do you serve on or support besides ours that you may want to share about?
Well, I'm proud to serve on a number of boards. One of them is LifeNet Health, which is based in Virginia Beach, but is a global nonprofit that focuses on transplantation and what they call life regeneration. So it's worth about $500 million now.
Oh my.
And I've been on that board for 16 years. 16 years, and they started out doing organ transplants. So now they do ocular transplants. They do burn treatments,
Wow.
and it really has been a privilege. Been a privilege. I'm the only non-physician on the board, and
Really?
it has been a real education. Yeah, a real education. So that one I'm very, very proud of. And then I also have served on the board of the the Coalition for Effective Local Democracy. This is my 22nd year on that board, and it's a joint U.S. and South African nonprofit that seeks to develop young people in the East Transvaal region of South Africa. And we do that by helping to build schools, especially in rural areas. We get computers to the kids. We work on civic education and development, and we do so under the leadership and guidance of the tribal leaders who are in those rural areas. So that's been a real education and a privilege. And then we also serve on the board of a new foundation just started in honor of one of my mentors, the syndicated columnist Neil Pierce. Pierce was a journalist who focused on urban and regional issues, and we had been working together since 1977. Unfortunately, he passed away at age 89 in 2000, I think it was. And so we have established the Neil Pierce Foundation in his name, supporting through fellowships journalists who write about urban affairs and social justice in cities. And so that's been a real privilege. And then in the past, we've served on the board of the National Civic League in Denver, which has been around since 1894. And I haven't been around since 1894, although I feel like that's it. But they are focused on citizen participation and civic development in schools. And they also are the nonprofit that every year selects and awards the All-American cities. And Minneapolis has been an All-American city a couple times. And I've served on the jury for the selection of those for 24 years. And that's really a wonderful way to see all the good that is going on in cities and communities, because we hear about all the bad.
Yes.
So those are just a few.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Wow. I wasn't familiar with all of those. I was only, I think, familiar with one of those. Goodness, that's just so wonderful. And then you talked about being a dean. What's the area where you serve as dean? What is the academic area?
It's the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, which consists of 9 academic departments. Okay. And I love it because I get to learn about each of these disciplines, whether it's criminal justice and sociology, whether it's art, whether it is music, or political science and public administration, social work, and the skilled and really talented faculty leadership and students in those departments really are an inspiration to interact with daily.
I bet. So, oh my goodness. So you are a dean, and then you you teach at all 3 colleges as well, correct?
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. And we really enjoy it. It's not laborious. It's really something to look forward to. Right. And also these students end up in many ways teaching us. just as you did when you were a scholar at
Oh,
Fielding. You taught us as much as anything we might have taught you.
oh, well, that I'm speechless about that. That's really humbling because I don't know that that's true, but I know that I know that I hung on every single word that you spoke with your stories and your experiences and all that you did, Laniel, and continue to do. You've taught me that too. You've taught me that with the heaviness of social justice pursuits, that when I get myself caught in feeling stuck or in feeling overwhelmed, you've encouraged me to stay in light and levity so that I'm sustainable. And I just really appreciate that counsel, and I just really appreciate you modeling that way of being to me and to
I
everybody.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So let's continue. So how important do you see empathy within the structure and practice of teaching at a college level?
It's absolutely vital and indispensable, because when I start to teach or I have a class, I try to learn as much about them right away as I possibly can.
Yeah.
That learning sets the foundation and becomes the material for mutual empathy, where we understand what it is they're trying to do and be, and they understand how we are trying to get them to do and be those things. And you can't do that if you don't know anything about them. So most teachers have a preset syllabus that they give the students and a preset academic program. I tend to build my syllabus about what I learn about the students as they explain that to me in the class. And that also gives me an opportunity to be empathetic to things they're going through, things they're going through with their intrapersonal selves, things they're going through with their families, with their friends, and just being young people in this generation in a very trying global and local set of circumstances. So all of those things can really make you empathetic and sensitive. So if they need more time on papers, or if they need more time in the office with me, et cetera, then we're willing to do that, because that's part of the educational development, and hopefully they will share that practice with whomever they teach subsequently.
Wow. That's just so beautifully said. And I see that with you, and what you're talking about is a whole human being, that when you have a student, you are not looking at them only as a student. You are understanding that they have a life outside of your classroom. And by you taking the time to get to know who they are, and then, like you just so eloquently put, design coursework and timelines and such to align with an individual, it's just wonderful. And it's it helps create the successes then that happen subsequently, right?
And this is particularly important, Wendy, when we're talking about Virginia State University as a historically Black college and university. Sometimes the industry of higher education treats these schools very much like the untouchables were treated in India. And one story I remember about Gandhi and the untouchables, he said, look, that was as big a struggle for me in my effort to get India independence from England as anything, my own people. And so when they didn't get my preaching about this, what I decided to do was to adopt 6 little untouchable girls into my family. And I referred to them as Harijan. And Harijan in Hindi means child of God. So anybody referring to them would have to refer to them as a child of God.
Wow. Oh, that's
that
really
was a
beautiful.
very inspirational story.
Wow. I love that story.
All of us are children of God.
We are.
We're all children of God. So
we are.
So we have to identify the nursery as something we share in common.
That's right. That is right. No, it's so beautifully said. And I do remember that story from another time. And I remember how powerful it had hit my heart before too, and just equally so now. Remember that our One Child Cries song that represents our nonprofit, our music is a part of our nonprofit. One Child Cries, that's what the implication is there. We're all children of God. That doesn't mean caring when a child is in despair or in peril. That means when any one of our of the children of God are hurting or are in need. When one child cries, we all wipe our eyes. Know that we care. Our love is there. Our empathy we share.
That's
Going
exactly
back,
right. So,
yeah, going back to I didn't want to accept the compliment, but going back to how you operate in Fielding Graduate University, I absolutely did feel that you and the other professors deeply respected what we brought to the table as scholars, even before we did the doctoral coursework and became more adept at academic writing and that sort of thing. But we did feel that you heard us, and we did feel that you were allowing us to choose what we looked at, what we researched, what we studied within our classes. So there was that great flexibility that you just spoke of at the historically Black college teaching that you also implement at Fielding so beautifully, and so do the others. You're right that flexibility is incredibly important. And thank you so much for speaking so well about empathy being enveloped through all of what you do, and really in all of education. Because we in our nonprofit are about greater access for everybody to have higher ed degrees and to be valued at every level. So I'm going to go to another question. Fielding Graduate University, where I graduated and you teach, is a mentor-focused program. So I was just talking about that, which to me lends itself to empathy. Explain your observation of empathy in your planning, structure, and delivery of teaching. But I think you just did that. But talk about it in terms of even when so before you take the information in, when you have a class, do you have sort of a scaffolding about how you want to teach something? And is that scaffolding created from your other experiences, so that you build it in such a way that it can flex? Is that a clear enough question? I guess I can make that clearer. But do you? Okay.
No, it is. And being from New Orleans, I cook gumbo, and gumbo consists of a lot of different ingredients that come from a lot of different sources. But the sauce and the particular touch is that of the cook. And
Yes.
You're constantly saying to yourself as you're creating these recipes, she's going to like this. I think she'll like this. Or I hope she'll like this.
Yes.
Or I hope he'll like this.
Yes.
That's an empathetic gesture.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how well you cooked it or how closely you followed the recipe. Is it nutritious, and is it pleasing to the consumer, to the customer?
Yes.
And so the same thing happens in teaching. We have to learn. And one of the things that I have to tell the truth about in teaching, of course, whether it's HBCU, Fielding, or William and Mary, is we have to embrace our mistakes, because we make a lot of mistakes along the way, and they do end up injuring the very people we say we care about. So a person who is driven by empathy embraces mistake as part of the academy of learning and development.
Yes.
You never graduate from that. You never graduate from that. You're always making mistakes from which you should learn and grow. And that means sometimes going within yourself and sort of coming to grips with the things you didn't do so well, and the things you could have done better. So another Gandhiism I remember is when he had been put in jail for 6 years for sedition. When he was released, the British constable thought he would get some mileage off of Gandhi's publicity by asking him, "Mr. Gandhi, have you learned anything from your 6 years of incarceration?" And Gandhi looked up at him and said, "Yes, I have learned that jail is very agreeable to me." And for the empathetic person, jail is you're embracing your mistakes with other people, but also within yourself. And it should be very agreeable to you.
Yes. It's that introspection time. It's the decision.
Yes.
It's the humility to be introspective, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because
absolutely. So even in the Bible, the Bible tells us in the New Testament that after a long day of preaching, Jesus would go to that place in the hills. It says to pray, but our modern day parlance might define it as to chill.
Yes.
And
Yes.
to
Yes.
have those introspective moments that recharge your batteries so
Right.
that when you go back out there again, you're renewed in
That's
your
right.
mission. And, obviously, Jesus is the most empathetic role model I know. And
Right.
it's just amazing to me when every time I read the New Testament, I see something different, something new.
Right.
And
Right.
one of the things that grabbed me was healing is part of empathy, and empathy is part of healing.
Yes.
So
Yes.
notice when the Lord is reputed to have healed someone, he never says, Wendy, aren't you glad I healed you? You were a mess before I got you, girl. He never says anything like that. He says, Wendy, your faith has healed you,
Right.
which means that if you don't participate, you don't get healed.
Yes.
And now that's empathy for you, where he can
Yes.
see what you need
Yes.
and respond to it and solicit your direct and best involvement in it all in one gesture.
Wow.
Now you
Wow.
can't beat that for empathy.
No. That's a beautiful demonstration of empathy for sure. And and the other thing that strikes me about what you just said is that empathy becomes empowerment as well. And because it's you've healed yourself. It's not it's as leaders who are entrusted in educating, we really, it feels that you operate from a place of deep humility and understanding that that your job in doing so is through that empathetic empowerment. That is the reminding people,
Absolutely.
yeah, this is you. Just like you were trying to do with me. You said we've learned so much from you, Wendy, and that's
we have.
Well, thank you.
And so we know we all have endless supply of empathy within us.
Yeah.
We know that because we can't watch a news story about Ukraine without bursting into tears.
Yes.
It's as if you can connect immediately with what you've just seen and what those folks need in that moment. It's not that you feel sorry for them. You feel sorry for all of the inhumanity that brought them to that situation. That's
right. I remember when I was at Fielding, one of the professors talking to me about mirror neurons, right? And so as empathetic beings, when we see someone else hurting, we can feel it because of the mirror neurons that we have. We are hardwired to have empathy, unless we have so much trauma or generational trauma that it is muting that or circumventing some of that. But for the most part, that's something that's a constant and very, very human. Can I back up for a second to you talking about that? Okay. So that flexibility that you were talking about with your historically, tell me the acronym again about that, HBCUs. Is that what it is?
Yes, historically Black colleges and universities.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you for saying that out for the listeners. So talk to me about that in regard to the flexibility. I know what you were talking about with it, but I want to hear in your words just why that's so important in that location.
It's very important because we have about 4,200 colleges and universities in the United States. 104 of them have been identified as historically Black colleges and universities.
Yes.
Many of them were founded in the late 19th century after emancipation as schools for the colored people.
Yes.
It looked like an empathetic gesture, but it really was a political gesture. And the reason I mention this is that many of these schools were led by very good people, many of whom eventually became Black people. Some of them were led by white people, but they were on a tight leash. They were on a tight leash by the states and religious denominations that helped to found them. And therefore, they made their curriculum and their program very rigid.
Yes.
And a lot of that tradition carries into HBCUs even to today.
Really?
So our view is that these students, if the students need anything, they need to be met where they are,
Yes.
not where we think they are, or
Yes.
not what we think will be pleasing to the people we are accountable to,
Yes.
but where they actually are. And where they
Yes.
actually are at Virginia State, we have very talented young people who are coming out of broken family situations, who are coming
Yes.
out of poverty,
Yes.
who are coming out of trauma in their lives. Some of them have gone through abuse as
Yes.
children, and this is who you meet when you come to the
Yes.
classroom. So if you come
Yes.
in thinking that you're teaching students from Harvard University or Princeton, all respect to them, then you're already off on the wrong foot.
Right.
And so your listening ear has to be inclined toward the student
Yes.
to be empathetic, and not just to be empathetic, but to have a chance at really getting some educational material across to them that
Yes.
includes interpersonal ethics and values, and not
Yes.
just subject matter.
That's right. That is right. Absolutely. That's just so beautifully put. And when we consider the crushing oppression and racism and the generational trauma, it's infinitely important, and it's the only, it can at times be the only way to help your students create that success, is by having that absolute awareness, and by having uniquely Black colleges with a mind to be able to serve that need and respect that generational trauma, respect the history, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. That's so beautifully said. Thank you. Let's move to a little bit different something. This is a question I have for you. I have long surmised that you have chosen to serve so broadly because you want to offer support and impact for a greater understanding of social justice, also in a broad way. Because you are amazing. You are juggling at an almost impossible level as far as a workload, and yet you do, because you have the energy, the intellect, the drive to do so. But I'm wondering, is that a fair assumption for me to imagine that the reason for that is because you want that broad impact? First of all, is that a fair assumption?
That's part of it. Yes.
Okay.
And
then please expound further for me from
well,
your
the
words.
other part of it is that I have been in higher education now 53 years.
Okay.
And I started at two Catholic colleges.
Okay.
One St. Mary's College of California, and then after that, University of San Francisco, the Jesuits. And then I went to an HBCU, Howard University. And I always wanted to keep, as I moved along in my career, connections with different higher educational institutions, because I wanted to understand what was going on in the industry of higher education, and not just in a particular university. So I often say I don't teach college. I have a higher education practice.
That is fascinating, and I totally get that, because you are the policy guy, you are the systems professor. Of course you would gravitate towards wanting to look at it from that view and that vantage point. And then you have more that you can consider then by being in the multiple environments concurrently, right?
Right. And the other thing is that we've been able to broker some relationships between these schools, so that William and Mary and Virginia State have some initiatives they do together.
Nice.
Fielding actually has collaboration with 3 HBCUs now, including the University of the Virgin Islands and the University of the District of Columbia. So practically, it's a way of sort of brokering some collaboration between and among them, because I think that's what they're going to have to do to be not only be empathetic and effective, but I think in today's world, collaboration, creating workable, complex systems is the way to go. Nobody operates on an insular basis anymore.
Absolutely.
So I want to be sure that these kinds of institutions know about each other and work with each other, and increasingly they do. And
Yes.
so I'm really happy to see that over the years, because that was not the case just a few years ago. They were absolute boundaries between and among these kinds of institutions.
That is fascinating, and I could see that, and that's really interesting how it has evolved in that way. What do you think was besides just the general idea of reaching out and collaborating? Was there another turning point in our country or world for which that happened, or how that was encouraged to happen? Was there anything that you can pinpoint?
I think there were a couple of things. One was in 1976, Gerald Ford, who was then the president, taking over from Nixon, who had resigned,
Okay.
started the month-long celebration of Black History Month, and as part of that, contributed to what we now have as the ongoing White House initiative on HBCUs.
Nice.
And that has not only given additional money to HBCUs,
Nice.
but encouraged collaboration between
Okay.
HBCUs and majority institutions. So
Okay.
if you're in Houston, Texas, for example, the striking thing is Texas Southern University the campus is literally across the street from the University of Houston. And
Wow.
they have now built a collaboration with each other that
Nice.
is really noteworthy. And their president, by the way, needs to be lifted up for that. This is a lady from India named
Okay.
Renu Khator. She's the chancellor of
Okay.
all 5 campuses, the University of Houston, and she's pushed this collaboration with Texas Southern University among her other leadership achievements. So,
Fantastic.
and she's a wonderful leader in college. I hope you all will have a chance to interview her at some point.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I would love that. Yeah, I have to gush about my gender. I think you are an amazing collaborator. And yet when I hear about this female leader, this is what comes to mind too, though. I feel like female leaders have that beautiful inherent ability of pulling, of collaborating, of pulling people together, of really honoring latitude and not as I don't know, how do I put this? Not that women can't have ego or can't, exploit power. However, it feels to me, given, I don't know, when I think about being a mother, I think about loving, mentoring, and nurturing, and the things that that resonate with me. That spills into how I lead, and I've noticed that with other female leaders as well. And they tend to be people who love latitude, who love sharing. Who love sharing leadership, who love offering opportunity instead of needing to hold over. So I tend to, and I think other females tend to be people who aren't as attached to hierarchical control. I feel like they are more cooperative, and I know that's a generalization about my gender, because again, there's variations within it. But that came to mind, yeah. And so I think about.
I agree.
Thank you. I think about that.
I would just add to it that to me, women are divinely and genetically predisposed to family.
Yes.
And family is, by definition, a multiple and a collaborative enterprise. So I'm writing a piece right now that's entitled "It Takes a Child to Raise a Village." And the point simply is that children raise us rather than the other way around. And mothers and women are at the beginning of this from the inception. So
yes,
they're part of the brokering dynamic that enables us to see how children are raising us. Because I was a different guy before I became a father.
Yeah.
And when I became a father, something happened. Speaking of empathy, and something happened interpersonally and intrapersonally that made me much more responsible than I was going to be if I had stayed single.
Yes.
So the children, the 2 sons, have raised me as much as I've raised them.
Yes. Yes. I feel that way too. I totally get that.
Exactly.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
And then circling back around to the paper that you're writing, it's really true. And another way I might say it too is, going back to, I call it preserving childhood preserves humankind. I believe kids come into the world so naturally able, like you do, to love and to have empathy and to give. And it's when we as parents or a society take that away that we have a problem. And so I so
That's right.
honor. Yeah. Yeah. I so honor what you're writing, because that's spot on that way. And we have to keep
And,
our hearts open. Yeah. To seeing that the kids
and
have
this
it
has
right.
been, they have it right. And this is also comes from a lot of years of international travel
Yes.
in Africa and India and South America and
Yes.
Europe and different places where I've seen this dynamic at work,
Yes.
where it's about their family.
Yes.
And we have said it's the adult doing the raising, but it's actually the child doing the raising, because
Yes.
we
Yes.
build our customs and our culture and our
Yes.
rituals around the different stages of development of children. Right?
Yes. Yes.
When we have them, when they become of age, when they become sweet 16s, and when they graduate from high school, as they go on to college, and as our relationships unfold with them as young adults. And so this is also true of our relationships in other contexts. And it is the yolk in the egg, raising families and children, is empathy.
Yes.
Because the first thing that happens to moms say this, is that I just feel for this little person.
Yes.
There's just something about them that just,
Yes.
makes me and them and so on. There's this
Yes.
wonderful commercial that comes out. I think it's Pampers or something, and they're changing the little kid, and this baby has just been born, and the baby is looking up at the mother, like waiting for the mother's next sound to come.
Yes. Yes.
And if I was writing a sequel to that commercial, I would have the mother looking at the child, waiting for the first sounds to come.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
having been raised in a family where I'm the oldest of 7, I saw my
Wow.
mother and father sort of exemplify this. And
Yes.
so it's that joy. And so one of the reasons I like the fund and the focus of the fund is its focus on young people and children.
Oh, thank you. Wow, thank you. I want to circle back to how you spoke about this, and you said so beautifully that when we're a parent, we adapt to every level of development of our child, and it is so true.
Yeah.
We make the house safer. We do at the certain stages and blah blah blah, and then we read books and we play and we do different things. I think that aligns so well with how you teach and why you can teach the way that you do. It's that flexibility when we are parents or teachers, and in a way they're interwoven. Toby talked about that in our first podcast as a special ed teacher. She talked about she puts 10 things on a board, and if she gets 2 done during a day, that's fine, because she is fluid and she decides to adapt in moments. And so when we adapt to the stages, and then like you also said, with students, we adapt to the levels that people are at. We reach them where they are interpersonally and academically. And then we continue to really create a dance with each one of our students and each class and each group of classes that we have based on that. I love that. And it's so beautifully said in tying it as you did to empathy, with that being the yolk of an egg. It is such a gift, because when we get to come along on the growth of anyone at any age, whether it's our child or our students, we get to be reminded of areas, just like you were talking about with your humility and introspective time. We get to reassess ourselves and where we may be becoming cynical or negative or not doing enough research, or not looking into something enough, and or not operating from a place of just being and spirituality and or just loving one another. Even just I think children and our Right. Yeah. Our students give us those opportunities of coming back to what is the perspective of what's really important, right? Because we get caught in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we get caught in achievement and everything else, and really, yeah. So, oh gosh, it's so wonderful to talk to you. We always have similar
Well,
things common.
you're hitting an empathetic chord when words are exchanged between you and others, like "I feel you," "I
Yes,
hear you."
yes,
Uh,
yes.
in our Creole, "Moi aussi," "Me too," "D'accord." Now you're expressing the alignment that is emerging between the two of you, that is transported along an empathetic cable.
That's right. That's
And
right.
uh, and,
That's
and
right.
and by the way, speaking of mentorship, I always feel that the key to good mentorship is its mutuality. That you are
Yes.
being raised as a mentor as much as you're imparting anything to your mentee. And
Oh, oh
so when
goodness.
we did our our male mentoring program in church,
Hmm.
we made it very clear to our young men that they were raising the men in the church
Right.
as much as we were raising them.
Right.
And their whole attitude toward the program shifted after we said that,
Yes.
because it wasn't a unilateral, one way, me to
Yes.
you kind of thing.
Yes.
It was a mutual relation. And that's what
Yes.
happens in
Yes.
marriage too. I mean, I
Hmm.
often like to say, my wife coils when I say this, but when we were courting, that was the term we used back in the day. I didn't
Okay.
know what that meant. I thought courting was when you got a divorce. But anyway, um, when when I took her to meet my mom said in Creole, "I really like this girl. She can finish raising you." And my goodness, is that really turned out to be the truth? It turned out to be the
Yes.
truth. But the wife
Yes.
has said there's some particular ways I've raised her as well, because
Right.
our raising is not complete when we leave home.
No. No.
It's
No.
not complete. We just
No.
have enough to leave home,
Yes.
but we're not
Yes.
raised yet.
No.
So,
No.
so
And no. And I might add, we're never done being raised by
thank
life.
goodness.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
thank goodness.
That's
Thank
right.
goodness. That's
That's
why.
right.
That's what makes me trust God, because eternity is like that. It's always going. You talk about sustainability. You can't get more sustainable than the eternal.
That's
So
right.
that means as long as you live in any form, you're going to be growing and changing and evolving and all those things. And if you think this is the end of it, well, that's why they call the graduation exercise a commencement. You know, you're just getting started.
That's
So
right. Oh my gosh, it's so true. It's so true. And we're able to learn more and grow more when we do have that kind of humility, I think, and flex. Yeah, everything has always taken longer in life than I realize. And once one knows that,
right.
then you have the patience to take the time to learn and grow and be ready for the next something. Okay,
And
gosh,
make you laugh. If you think the door is closed on your development, then you'll be singing Peggy Lee's famous song, "Is That All There Is?"
it's so
Uh,
true.
Very
Yes,
famous song. Is that all there is? There's
right,
got to be more than that.
right,
There's got
right.
to be more than that. So
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely,
this is
always.
this is why I like hanging out with you and our fun team, though, because they're all in this period of perpetual springtime.
Yes,
Of growing,
yes,
of things come alive in the spring as we're about to experience.
that's
You
right.
know, the dormancy of the weather of
Right.
the winter sort of gives way to the spring, and you go back to T.S. Eliot's. April is the cruelest month because it pushes all these plants up from the ground with a lot of sweat and so on.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
springtime. It's
yes.
springtime, and there's nothing greener in spring than empathy.
That is, that's a beautiful visual and metaphor for our group of people who are working together. I love that about you. You are such a beautiful storyteller. And I think because you are such an effective storyteller, I think that also helps you with collaboration and bridge making and relationship building. Yeah, I think it's so key to who you are, and I because I'm a storyteller, I would value that too. Okay, let me jump back in here and let's take a look at where I want to go. I love our organic conversation. It's so important that it can flow. It's just fantastic. Let's see. Help me out with this one. What is I say here, let's see. I believe empathy is inextricably linked with social justice. And I'm wondering if you want to speak to the connection of that. And then the next one I'm going to ask is about that connection also with policy. But let's go back because I just talked about storytelling. And I said, in this next question about policy, I said that it seems it's an imperative in wording, crafting, and writing policy, and to help with its adoption, with the narrative, with the story. But let's back up and first let's do I believe the empathy is inextricably linked with social justice. Do you see the connection too? And help our listeners understand that connection or intersectionality.
Very, very strong connection, because I think, first of all, to be aware of social injustice is the first step to empathy. I think when a lot of people, black and white, saw those images on television of civil rights workers being beaten, hosed, dogs being unleashed on, now they become conscious of what the reality of racism in its extreme forms can be.
Yes.
And that unleashed a level of empathy out there that led people like Viola Liuzzo, James Rebb, and other white people, the Greek Orthodox bishop, to come to the side of these workers, of these protesters.
Yes.
And I think the other thing Thurgood Marshall reminds us of is that the white folks and their souls are at risk if social injustice continues.
Yes.
So a holistic social justice movement embraces even the enemy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it's the enemy we're trying to transform here. The other piece of it, I think, is that, as King said, social injustice, or anywhere, is social injustice everywhere.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
we what's happening to the people in Ukraine, that's important. It's critical. We have to be empathetic. But I notice also that the media hasn't mentioned all those people being killed in Sudan, in Ethiopia, right?
Yes.
All those people being killed in Bolivia, in Guatemala, in other places of the world that aren't white,
Yes.
And so this is to me, I think, insensitive. It's unjust. And we spent some time as fielding with a president of a university in Ethiopia. And I can tell you, Kitty Kelly Epstein, one of our faculty, and I went over there several times to teach action research. This battle between the Tigray and the Amhara is just horrific. I mean, all of the displacement of people, the poverty, the children being exploited, all of the sexual assaults by people in the military. It's like Yemen, same thing with Yemen. And we go around the world like this, Myanmar. So part of what we have to do is not only address the obvious, right in your face injustices like, Putin invading Ukraine, but also link this to injustices in the same caliber that are being committed around the world that subtract from our total humanity.
Yes.
And so we talk about climate change and endangered species, but we as human beings right now stand in candidacy for becoming the first self-extinguishing life form on the face of the earth. And we're supposed to be the smartest. We're supposed to be the smartest.
Yes.
So that speaks a lot about injustice in a global context.
Yes.
And then we have all the particular examples that we can relate around the corner as well as around the world.
Yes. Yes. Let's back up with Ukraine again, too, and let's talk about how Black and Brown people have not been treated well when they're trying to flee the country to get into Poland. Do you want to speak about that?
Absolutely. And well, there's a kind of two dimensions of this one. One is that kind of understated in all the news coverage about Ukraine has been the migration of people from the third world to not only Ukraine, but to Russia.
Yes.
At one time, Russia ran the Patrice Lumumba University there for basically for third world uh, leaders who were socialists or communists. So there's a significant migratory population in Russia and in Ukraine, and you will see images of black people at those train stations trying to get on track 4 in the Poland because they've got families there as well. Okay.
Yes.
But we're not paying as much attention to that.
Yes.
Also, we're not paying a lot of attention to the people who are still suffering from the original explosion of the Chernobyl power plant,
Yes.
graphite power plant.
Yes.
And the people who were immediately around that plant suffered the most. We don't really pay attention to them. You know?
Yeah.
Some of them were workers and at the plant, and some of them just happened to live in that community. It's kind of like the people who live up there in 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's 11 miles from the capital of Pennsylvania, by the way.
Wow.
So, you know, when we talk about social justice and injustice, we have to look at the geography and demography of injustice, as well as the ethics and the spiritual decline that persists when injustice. And one of the things you remember from systems class is that systems seeks to bring about the kind of reconciliation between and among parts that are not working equally. That really works to the benefit of all the parts.
That's right.
Heather McGee's recent book called "The Sum of Us" puts it beautifully. She puts it beautifully, where she says to people who are in control of corporations and white people, do you realize how much racism costs you? Do you realize how much gender discrimination and exploitation costs you? Human trafficking costs you? Do you realize how much it costs not to be a child-focused society? And Marion Wright Edelman, who ran the Children's Defense Fund, for the first 5 years of the existence of that fund, every year they would publish a children's defense budget, which is the answer to the question, if we were really committed to children and youth as we say we are, what would the federal budget look like? I wish they would resume that because it is an example of what we can do to deal with injustice in a creative way that incorporates all the players here. And that's not easy to do because, you know, if you've been exploited for years and years, you know, the exploited groups carry resentment toward the exploiters. And they'd rather kill you than save you, you know. But to kill you means that they're killing themselves. And then that's, you know, so this is another thing about the fund that I like. We're starting with the young people, and we're trying to get their hearts involved in it, as well as their minds and their skills. Because, you know, sometimes when it's just your mind and your skill, you go to technology and technical and algorithmic solutions to problems rather than human solutions to problems. That include what we've been talking about all along. That's empathy. And that's the way a lot of our heroes in social justice have operated, is to say, look, you know, let us make you aware, first of all, of what you're doing. As you become aware of it, you and your conscience and your sense of ethics have to go to work to play your part in resolving the injustice. Whether it's the United Farm Workers, the suffragettes, you know, the labor movement, we can go down the same principle. Are you aware of what you're doing?
Indeed.
And of course, many of them are. So we're trying to reclaim you as well as us. You know?
Absolutely.
We could be and give you more whole than we're being and giving to you in this part that you've allowed us.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. Just have to take a moment with that. That is just so incredibly said. There was an arc of information that you just shared that was just so full and robust. Wow. You know, I go back to the kids again in my mind, and I think about the preserving childhood preserves humankind, and I go to the fact that play pedagogy and preserving childhood, allowing kids to fully form as human beings, that is leveling the playing field from the beginning. It is honoring all children, and as we honor all children and we equip them as whole people, where we have poured into them, where we have allowed them to inform us, where they are whole. When children are whole, all children are whole, they can come from that frame of reference, not a fractured frame of reference. And then I believe the children, and you do too, because of what you just said, our children then, with what they will model, will inform their families, their communities, their country, their world. Right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And yes. And you know, and you see on our board, we've got, you know, we have a board member who's a senior in high school, Anthony Hodakainen, and he is chairing the education committee.
Yes.
He has been an intern of mine for 4 years. He is brilliant. And too often, we are also not honoring our young people with the capacity, gifts, talents, and intellect they possess. And instead of honoring what they can deliver, we are, you know, handing packets to them and nonsensical, not non-relevant kinds of work. And you know, and you know how I feel about that. I feel like our kids are smart enough, and like you are talking about today, we need to be respecting that they are raising us. When we adopt the idea that all human beings are children of God, all our kids are people, and we respect and honor that about them, that impacts the world just so greatly. Anyway, sorry, I get on my soapbox.
Sure, and I think no, I hear you, and I think of young Greta Greenberg leading in the climate change movement, still a teenager. I think of our poetess at the inauguration of Biden.
Yes.
Who's in her early 20s. I think of Simone Biles.
Yes.
I mean, I can go down a list of these people who are already doing it on behalf of the world.
Isn't it the truth?
And they're doing it on behalf of the world.
Yes.
They're already doing it.
Yes, and they understand that there is something incredibly stunning about our connection. There are definite negatives of technology, but the stunning positive is the connection of a world, more of an understanding of a world family. And our young people are gleaning that, and many of them are internalizing that in a positive way. And I see that happening. And, you know, and DRS is another stunning example at our board. DRS has been an intern, you know, was an intern with me for about 6 years, and now board member. And his music is I always say this to him, I think he's a Martin Luther King, but as a performing artist.
Yeah.
He has
I'm so proud of that young man.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has shown.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am glad that you are, and I'm glad that you value and see his gifts. He has an ability with his writing, with his artistry, to be, and even his own version of spoken word. He chooses on his own as a Black male to not, and it's not a criticism against rap where people do use profanity. That's their choice. And that is a genre that is important to express oneself. So it's not a judgment, but for him, he has chosen to use it more like a Martin Luther King, where there is no profanity. He has messages about unity. He even does a song about anxiety. So he is making it okay for men and for Black males to understand one's vulnerability. And he is offering that with such courage as a young male to put himself out there that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely. We have so many examples, and
yes,
the other thing I think is important to hear is we have to work this along the whole demographic continuum, from very young people to older people.
Yes.
I just lost a wonderful mentor to many of us, not just me, who passed in December at 92 years old. His name was Edward O. Wilson,
Sorry.
arguably the top expert in the world on ants.
Okay.
And a two-time Pulitzer Prize winner who
Okay.
writes a lot about biographic, about biological diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that one of his wishes, and he said this toward the end of his life, was that we would find more and more collaborative opportunities between the very oldest people in our society and the very
Yes.
youngest people in our society.
Yes. Agreed.
So that the entire scale of the piano can be played.
Love it.
And
Love
it's
it.
a beautiful sentiment. It's a beautiful sentiment. And we're seeing that in some places.
I love that. I do love it when nursing homes have preschools in place, and
Yes.
with Jelly Beans Creative Learning in my past that I ran for almost 18 years, I did do intergenerational work with my young kids and seniors because I do value that, and I think there's so much that our kids can learn from the seniors because they came from a generation without technology, and so they have this beautiful ability of communicating and storytelling, and can help encourage a child with that language ability that is being lost. I mean, our young kids are growing up watching people more on phones than watching people interact with one another, communicate effectively with each other or with this child. And we need to make sure that those opportunities are there, and older people offer that, and then perspective and obviously history and encouragement, and vice versa, like you've noticed. And our young people can give hope and love and can teach the older people as well. Let's
I was just going to say, ironically, this is exemplified very well in Minneapolis and throughout the state of Minnesota in what we call immigrant communities, the Hmong, the Somalis, etc.
Yes.
You go to a party. When you go to a party or you go to a celebration, it's all intergenerational.
Yes.
It's not just for this age group or that age group.
Indeed.
And, the young people in those societies are not ashamed to say, I asked my grandmother, I asked my grandfather.
That's right.
As quickly as they'll say, I asked my mother or my father.
That's right.
Our inspiration may come from the very groups that we've given trouble trying to get into the country.
Wow, that is a powerful observation, and you are so right about that. I know that I love that. We have a large Somali population in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where I live, and when I was subbing in the district, kids got to know me, and so when I'd be out walking and I'd see kids with every age from their generation, I would always say "Assalamu alaikum" to make sure that I was greeting and helping people feel welcome in our town. But what ended up happening was I would sit on the grass with this beautiful giant group of the family, exactly what you're saying, intergenerational, all ages, and the kids would share with the elders my name and that I liked writing books or whatever they were sharing. And then I would then communicate with the elders through the kids. It was such a beautiful experience. It felt like I was back in Africa again because the people were so loving and wonderful, and the intergenerational component you were talking about was stunning. And you're right, the very people that we may be trying to keep out are beautiful examples of what could be so helpful in society and in our world. Wow, love it.
Well, humorously, in ethics and empathy, the Somalis might be saying to us, "We are the captains now. We are the captains now."
Yeah. Oh, there's such.
Remember from Captain Phillips?
No, I don't.
I'm the captain now.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, there was one sequence. By the way, that Somali actor in Captain Phillips came from Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
And they take over the ship, out there off of Somalia, and he says to these white folks, "I am the captain now." So in many ways, a lot of these communities, ethically and empathetically, they are the captains now.
Yes.
And so we kind of keep up with what's going on with them.
Yes.
Because they bring from their culture and their experiences loads of empathy and ethical content we could benefit by.
It's just so beautifully said, and I felt that way too. And I oftentimes say to people from Africa, it's, I'm so glad you're here, because of the kind of experience I had in Tanzania. I felt I mean, I was just blown away by the emotional availability among the people that I encountered. And I just thought, oh my gosh, do we have a lot to learn about how people live with such grace and beauty with one another, and are so embracing of, of each other, but then us. It was interesting. I mean, even coming back to, I love Minnesota, and we're Minnesota nice, but it was interesting that I truly, Laniel, and I don't know if I shared this with you, I was in culture shock when I came home from Africa, and I felt like I want to go back. I want to, right? And when I meet people from Africa, that's what I try to relay. You bring a beauty, you bring an emotional availability to our country that I'm so appreciative for. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where
Okay, so
in Tanzania were you?
so I was so we were in a big place called Arusha at a certain point, and then we were near like Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Yep, and Mount Kilimanjaro. However, when we stayed, and then we went to Dar es Salaam. But when we stayed with the Barbag tribe, that was more Western Tanzania. And I was in a village called the Minyinyi, but we were in all of the different areas on the way there. We were also close to Kenya. So we were on the Serengeti when we were on safari. And then we were at Ngorongoro crater. So we were in that area where it's the biggest caldera in the world. That's where we saw the whole pride of lions, and we were just
that's my favorite. In all of Africa, that's my favorite city, Arusha.
Is it really?
Right between Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Meru.
Yeah.
And coffee growing region never gets over 80 degrees.
Yes.
I went there to give a lecture to the Eastern and Southern African Management Institute in Arusha.
Okay.
And this is many years ago, and been back many times. And it turns out that the city of Durham, North Carolina, one of their sister cities is Arusha.
It is not.
And they have some collaborative activities. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Durham, North Carolina. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's good to know.
That is good to know.
And then we're going to ask about public policy, right?
Yeah, so play with that for us, with your awesome intellect and storytelling ability. How is empathy connected in the effectiveness of policy adoption or even presentation?
Well, I think when policy truly becomes public, it becomes empathetic. A lot of policies are really
beautiful.
Not for the public at large. That's one of the problems.
Wow.
They're for different interest groups, different pressure groups, different lobbies, and the communities they represent. So I think our first step is to make public policy truly public. We don't do well historically, and even now, when we're trying to do something on a mass basis, whether it's public school education, whether it's healthcare, parks and recreation, law enforcement. When it comes to dealing with the entire public, we have problems. So we have problems because we don't really listen to all of the kinds of communities and institutions that make up the quote public. When it says we the people in the Constitution, the implication is that whatever we're doing in public policy is for the people.
Yes.
But we haven't got there yet.
Yes.
So I think one of the things a empathetic public policy can do is to, with its special radar, identify and reach out to, incorporate, and serve those folks that we've left out of we the people.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh, beautifully said. Mic drop. I don't even that was a mic drop. I don't have anything to add to that besides wow. Goodness. Powerful. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming along on this journey through a conversation today. SissyMarySue Education Fund's Educating Empathy podcast is available to you all. As we say goodbye, we want to share that we hope that you are well, and we send our love and our empathy. Until next time, tune in to part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Lenneal Henderson.